Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Block Reward Podcast. We've got a great conversation this week with our guest, Ben Perrin from the BTC Sessions, which is one of YouTube's largest and most successful Bitcoin education channels. Ben is a Canadian Bitcoiner, and he's been creating Bitcoin content for almost a decade and doing it full-time for quite a while. And he's somebody who has been successful navigating the Bitcoin education space by having an innate interest in how things work and working hard to understand different ways people learn. I've learned a lot from Ben myself, watching his different tutorial videos that range from the simplest things to the most complicated Bitcoin wallet installations that you might need to deal with. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Ben's experience and what he's learned, helping people learn about Bitcoin, some of his favorite tools and tutorials that he's created, and talk a little bit at the end about an initiative that he's taken on that's called the Saturday Sat Market that happens in his hometown of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. That the second one is coming up next week. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Scott Dietels. I'm the CEO and founder of Block Rewards. And part of our mission in bringing Bitcoin to the workplace is helping people understand why it will help. So if you're interested to learn something about one of the most successful Bitcoin educators in the world and his vision for how people can spend sats in their own local communities, stick around. This one's a good one. All right, welcome to another episode of the Block Reward Podcast. Our guest this week is Ben Perrin from the BTC Sessions. Ben is a Canadian Bitcoin educator, podcaster, all things Bitcoin, and we're thrilled to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on, Ben.
Thanks for having me, man. Glad to be here. Should be a good conversation.
Hope so.
Yeah.
We're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about your journey as a Bitcoin educator and some of the cool things that you've expanded into in terms of growing the message and signal. But before we do that, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got started.
Yeah. So I kind of stumbled across Bitcoin a handful of times before ever actually learning about it or touching it. You know, as most people do, your first exposure to it tends to be because there's some sort of article in and around price. You know, people come for number, go up, and they stay for the revolution. And that was very much my journey. But it popped across my radar a few times because when I was younger, I liked playing around with just like swapping out parts on MacBooks. Like, you know, I was actually flipping MacBooks for a little while. So like I'd buy an old MacBook off like Craigslist or something, and then I'd swap out for a bigger hard drive and some more RAM, and then I'd sell it to somebody else and, you know, make a couple $100. But because of that, I would get like these little tech blogs and stuff popping up in my feeds. And so TechCrunch and things like that. And so I noticed a few Bitcoin articles, and every time I noticed an article, it had gone up in price by like a factor of 10. So it's like, I saw like double digit prices. I was like, wonder what that is. Ignored it. You know, a few months later, wait, Bitcoin's $100 and something. Man, I missed that boat. And then, you know, flash forward to the end of 2013, it was like $1,200. I was like, what is going on here? Is this just a Ponzi scheme? Is it an outright scam, or is there something? And so having seen so much happen in such a short period of time, I tasked myself with investigating a little bit. And I actually did spend a few months kind of reading everything that I could on Bitcoin before I ever bought any. And then kind of in the spring of 2014, I started dabbling, you know, how do you use a wallet? How do you do all these different things? Where do I even get Bitcoin? And there weren't a lot of resources out then. I'm a very visual learner. So I was looking for where's the video tutorials? And lo and behold, there were basically none. And most recommendations I got were, okay, go over to this message board, scroll halfway down. You're going to see a comment from this guy named such and such, and he kind of wrote out point form what you got to do. I was like, oh my God, I don't learn this way at all. But I had to for the first couple of years, just anything. There was no good explanations on anything in terms of the practical hands-on stuff. And so, yeah, after spending a couple years tearing my hair out doing that blind, once I got comfortable with stuff, I was kind of felt comfortable speaking in front of people. I was okay with general video editing. So, and I had actually spent quite a bit of time doing some teaching. I used to be actually a dance instructor in school. So I taught little kids how to break dance. So I kind of combined all of those seemingly unrelated skills all together and started making step-by-step video tutorials for Bitcoin. And so that started as of 2016. And coming up in a few months here, will mark 8 years of doing BTC Sessions, which is wild.
How far along was it when it became your full-time thing?
So it's very much a hobby for the first, I'm going to say couple of years, but the timing also happened to work out pretty well. And the reason I say that is I started making step-by-step tutorials in spring of 2016. And then there was a huge bull run throughout 2017. And so when that came along, there was a plethora of people that started searching up, how do I use Bitcoin? And I was kind of really like, I was the only game in town at the time. Now there's incredible educators out there, and I'm so happy to see it. But at the time, it was like, if you wanted a tutorial, like it was kind of few and far between. And so I benefited greatly from that timing, but it still wasn't my full-time thing. Near the end of 2017, I started working for a company in and around the space that did Bitcoin ATMs. And over the next few years, I did the channel, but then I also worked for various Bitcoin companies here and there. And so I guess I was in the space full time. But as of 2020, turns out I hate people telling me what to do. So I was like, well, I'm just going to try my hand and just focus on the channel. And holy crap, I can't believe I didn't do it sooner, because it's amazing. I love everything that I do. And yeah, I just get to learn about Bitcoin and try cool things and try cool apps and devices and all these different things all the time and talk to people about it. And I'm so passionate about it. I haven't gotten bored in 8 years. Yeah. So it's 2020 was when I fully pulled the trigger to just fully be only doing the channel.
I mean, and like a lot of these things that you're doing tutorials on, they're not easy to learn even with a video. And I'm not embarrassed to say there's a few of yours that I've had to watch multiple times just to get my head around. Yeah.
Yeah. It's again, it can be quite a learning curve. I typically say to people, don't beat yourself up if you don't know everything, because nobody does. And don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. I think the general pathway that everybody should follow is just one step at a time, right? Where are you at? What is the next feasible thing for you to learn? And just take that one step. And once you're comfortable with that, then you can take another step. There's no need to tackle everything all at once. And I think a lot of people get that analysis paralysis where they go, oh my God, there's so many different things. Where do I even start? Just pick one, pick the most basic and go from there.
I agree. And it's also true that like you really don't need to know everything. Like you need to know enough to operate safely within the environment and avoid some easy pitfalls. But trying to know everything is also a kind of a crazy ambition. Like you'll just never get there.
Yeah, I can never keep up now. I mean, I try to cover as much as I can, but like there's huge swaths of areas of Bitcoin where I'm like, oh my God, I gotta start looking at how this stuff even works. And again, it's getting to the point where there's going to be specializations where people are really good at one particular thing, and you'll go to that person to learn about that, that faction or that part of Bitcoin.
I agree. Last week, our guest was Jeff Booth, and Jeff is in this space like 24/7, as many are. And he sort of commented that like the explosion of, what's the right way to say this? As the technologies are getting more wider on layer 2 and beyond, like there's just no way. It's going to be impossible.
Yeah. 100%.
When did you, you started out with an interest in how things work. and you're making videos about how things work. But then obviously along the way, there's a progression to helping people. You're helping people with a lot more than the technical understanding of how these things. You're helping them understand the why. And for you, like, what was that transition like as you were moving through your own journey of just trying to understand how this stuff works to, like, really understanding how it works?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that I've ever prided myself at being the why. I'm definitely more of the how, but I found that the easiest way for me to capture some of the why is to bring in guests where that is their wheelhouse. And so that kind of came in two forms. I now do a Thursday news show, and I just kind of looked for my favorite person that does that. And I could think of no better person than Nico over at Simply Bitcoin. And so I bring him in on Thursdays, and he's just so passionate about all of the crazy stuff that happens in and around the world of Bitcoin, and the why in terms of the cracks in the existing system. And so he's great at outlining that in his very unique way, and I love doing every show with him. And then the other kind of why is actually part of the title of the show. On Fridays, I do Why Are We Bullish? And you've been on there, and it was a great time. I really enjoyed that one. But the whole premise behind that one is that there's so many reasons why Bitcoin is exciting. And rather than me try to hone in on reasons specifically that I think Bitcoin is exciting, I thought, why not have a show where we get together with a bunch of people, and I'm not the one bringing the content, they're the ones bringing the content, and to the point where they get to decide what they're going to talk about on that episode. And so the premise of that one is each person just comes with a reason for being bullish, and it could change based on the week, based on personal experiences they have, new things they've tried out, new videos they've seen, new items in the news. And it's just a fun conversation because more or less each person gets to say, hey, this week I'm excited about this. And they get to explain why it's so exciting. And then we get to all riff on it together. And then we move on to the next person. And it's just, yeah, I tend to defer to others or try to aggregate others that are really good at the why. I get to do my rants too. And typically it's in and around something I've been trying in the region of how. That's often a reason for being bullish for me. But I love, you mentioned Jeff Booth last week. He's an absolute mentor of mine. I really look up to him, and people like Alex Gladstein and, Saifedean, Preston Pish, and Greg Foss, and all of these great people that can describe why Bitcoin in so many different ways. And one of my earliest influences would have been Andreas Antonopoulos back in the day. His talks really helped me decipher why and help lead me to creating videos on how. So that's kind of where I am with the why.
Andreas is an OG mention. I'm not sure he's come up on the show yet, and because he's sort of drifted back from prominence in the. But he was one of the original people in the world, really, on YouTube, doing talks, explaining people why these ideas are. He was on Rogan in like 2016 talking about Bitcoin.
He was on a couple times, I think. Yeah. And I mean, it's hilarious seeing old videos of him explaining to empty rooms of maybe 3 or 4 people why Bitcoin's so important. And, the contrast to now where you have events with 20,000 attendees, and it's just, yeah, what a change, what a decade it's been.
Yeah, it is a really interesting thing about what has changed in the world that has made Bitcoin more relevant over that time. And I think, myself, like I've worked in financial services my whole career, and 13 years ago, people just weren't really that concerned with the decay of the value of money. Like it just wasn't a mainstream idea. And that is one thing it is amazing how fast that one has changed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the past few years here, it's the first time that inflation has been a regularly touted mainstream term. Like people knew of inflation, but it was never really spoken about in a worrisome manner in our lifetimes anyways. And then you're getting the term fiat is now part of the mainstream vernacular. Like fiat currency is a term that a fair number of people have heard now, and it was unheard of prior. There's a rise in Austrian economics, a totally different way of thinking about economics to what one would encounter even going through post-secondary education. And even things like right now, the big thing is shrinkflation. Everybody's talking about shrinkflation. It's everywhere. Now, what I will say about that one is, and anybody that's listening that hasn't yet heard it, because you will, the big story around shrinkflation is that, the evil corporations are basically shrinking the size of the packaging in a sly roundabout way, but charging the same price. And that is happening, but nobody digs deeper than let's point our fingers at the merchants. It's a symptom of inflation, right? Like when you have roughly the same amount of goods and you increase the supply of money is just a measuring stick for all existing goods. So if you have more money, it's going to cost more money for each good. so it's a natural reaction of merchants to say like, well, if I'm selling a box of cereal and my competitor shrinks the packaging so that the box isn't as deep on the shelf and it's less grams of cereal in the box. If they do that and they charge the same price and I'm forced to increase prices and I don't shrink my packaging, the general behavior of an individual that is shopping will be to go for the lower price item without doing the math of what you're getting per dollar, how many grams of cereal. And so the reasoning there is, either we increase prices or we keep prices the same, package things differently, or reduce the quality of the good and stay competitive. And it is deceptive, but it's not that all the companies suddenly overnight got greedy at the exact same time. It's that the money is worth way less. And this is a relatively reasonable reaction to try and retain market share in a particular industry.
It's such a funny word, shrinkflation, and that's like a great example of the gaslighting that goes around how money works. And when I heard the term, all I thought was like, well, shrinkflation is a term that explains the shrinking nature of your purchasing power. It's nothing to do with businesses. So yeah. So I want to well, maybe love to ask you. Let's pick that up in a second. But I want to ask you a question I ask our guests every week, and that is the question of what is Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to describe what Bitcoin is, and you can get really deep with it, or you can keep it relatively simple. One description that I've liked using a lot lately kind of gets to the crux of it, and it also deciphers the difference between Bitcoin and everything else in the quote unquote cryptocurrency space. So fiat is the elites can print money. Crypto is everyone can print money, and Bitcoin is no one can print money. And so that's how I like to think of it. And we see what happens when the elites can print money, the rich get richer, the wage gap, the gap between the wealth gap widens. Those with capital and access to cheap credit and the first newly printed dollars get to build their wealth. And those that are living paycheck to paycheck are the most impacted. The everyone can print money problem is it's fiat on steroids, right? So like all the problems with the fiat system exist in a crypto system because the value of everything there just declines so quickly. It's like you're playing hot potato trying to figure out how quickly are things going to be printed? What are the rules of the system? Don't know. They could change at any point. Like it's a total crapshoot. And Bitcoin is just the opposite of both of those things. It is near absolute certainty of what the rule set is, what the issuance of the currency is, and how it's going to function into the future. You can obviously build new functionality on top of it, but at the base layer, how is the base of our money functioning? You pretty much have the rules in front of you, and they're very, very unlikely to change and very, very difficult to change, requiring the consensus of most participants to make that change. And so fiat is elites can print money, crypto is everyone can print money, and Bitcoin is no one can print money.
That's such a great answer. Like one of my favorites. As you study Austrian economics and Bitcoin and these different ideas around, the core issue is that people have never been able to responsibly wield the power to create money. And so your definition really does a great job of highlighting the sort of inherent moral problem that comes along with all of a sudden taking that power, which nobody has ever demonstrated the ability to use properly, and then just giving it to whoever wants to use it and seeing what happens. Like what?
Yeah, the issue wasn't that not enough people were able to create their own currency. The issue was that anyone was able to create their own currency. The reason that gold worked well was because nobody really could control it. Like it existed. It was the hardest thing to dig up more of, and it had basically a set of rules. It's just that it didn't scale well. It led to centralization, abstractions, and eventually a peg that could be dissolved at any point. And thus fiat. So, there's a reason why gold emerged as money. It wasn't decreed as money. And I think this is what we're seeing with Bitcoin is that lack of human control. There's no levers or buttons to push. It just is. It's rules without rulers, and the existing system is rulers without rules.
Yeah, and it makes me, this stuff's funny, not funny, but you think about an example of like how Dave Portnoy got involved with SafeMoon and couldn't believe that this thing didn't safely moon. And it's
the moon wasn't safe. Yeah, it's again, I think everybody will gradually come around to understand that the key feature of Bitcoin is that you can clearly see and understand how it will function well into the future. It's the certainty of the sanctity of that base layer of money is the killer app of Bitcoin. It's just, we're still in fiat land, and everybody thinks that in order to have something worthwhile, you need to move fast and break things, and you need to be like the next big tech startup. And if you're not iterating a million times over on everything, that you will fall to the wayside, and it's going to be like MySpace and Facebook. It's the exact opposite of that. We need absolute certainty, absolute scarcity, and a rule set that can't be screwed with. And that's what Bitcoin provides.
Simplicity and consistency. These things are, yeah. So as you've gone down this journey of helping people understand this stuff better, what's been something that you've learned along the way? Like what's been an aha moment for you on this trip?
I mean, in general, one of the things that took me a while to understand is that I mean, just the basic concept that creating money doesn't create value. That was like it sounds silly being in Bitcoin, and everybody just knows that now. Like but it's coming out of fiat land. It's a very strange concept to say, like, well, why would creating more pieces of paper, and I know most of it's digital, but Why would creating more pieces of paper with little numbers on it enrich society in any way? Like it wouldn't. Like nothing more is produced. And beginning to understand that humanity is enriched by productivity, that the only way that we are any better off is through human innovation and the ability to create more with less effort. And when you break the money, all you're doing is you're allowing a select few to capitalize on human innovation and exempt others from benefiting from it. And that's why we see, I think one of the biggest realizations for me was, and Jeff Booth very much helps with this in his book, The Price of Tomorrow. But the fact that when you have a system that is that broken, a blue collar worker is at a massive disadvantage, because when you enter into an employment contract, your view of the value of your time as a snapshot in that moment may be accurate, but that contract is almost immediately reneged on because the currency that it's denominated in depreciates. And it's not necessarily the fault of the employer, right? The company has a job to maximize profits, of course, and they're also directly incentivized not to change your wage. I wouldn't say that it's I wouldn't say it's their fault for the broken system, but they're incentivized to keep wages to a point where they maximize profits. And so it falls to the blue collar worker. You say an hour of my time is worth this many dollars. And then, even the stated inflation numbers are garbage that most of us know. But all of a sudden, you can't afford rent and groceries. It falls to you to go to your employer and argue and plead that you deserve, for the same amount of work, if that and with tools that likely have improved your productivity, that you deserve to keep up the same standard of living. That's basically what you're doing. You're begging and pleading to keep up the same standard of living, despite the fact that human innovation allows you to benefit that company even more. And it's such a broken system. It's so insidious. I was talking to my wife is a nurse, and I was talking with her the other day, and she was saying, I've been a nurse for going on 14 years now. And she said, I came in, I had a starting wage, and I'm capped out. I'm at my absolute top wage that I can. So my wage has increased a bunch throughout my career. But I honestly feel like I am worse off than when I started my career. Like I can afford less. And so I was curious, and I did the math on what her wage increase was, just like with regular seniority, and what inflation was. And she's actually right. Her purchasing power today capped out after, I think it capped out after about a decade of being a nurse, but nonetheless, and with increases in the top wage, her top wage now is less purchasing power than she had when she began as a brand new nurse. So I think it was something like if we use the stated numbers, the officially reported inflation numbers, her wage would have needed to go up basically 50% in that there's 50% inflation over that period of time, and it didn't. So yeah, she's worse off than when she started as a nurse. It was wild to kind of look at the numbers, but she's and this is what's happening. This is why you're getting people making TikToks in their car, and they're saying, I don't understand. I have a good job, I thought, and I can't afford groceries, and I'm living in a van, and like I'm a 50-year-old nurse. That's so that's one of the main things separating money and value and productivity and how those things intermingle. It was one of the the biggest realizations. And so, yeah, I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but that's the shocker for me.
Hey, everybody. I'm thrilled to announce that Block Rewards has come on board as a sponsor for the 2024 Canadian Bitcoin Conference happening in Montreal, May 16th to the 18th. It's going to be a great event with an unreal lineup of speakers, and we couldn't be more excited about being involved. If you're thinking about going and you don't have your tickets yet, you get 10% off of your pass using the code BLOCK2024, and that's all capital letters. And you can get those tickets at CanadianBitcoinConf.com. Hope to see you there. It's a great answer. I get like a lot of thoughts listening to you talk about it. Those TikTok videos are like, for me, they're basically an intellectual call to arms. It's like, okay, now they've made such a mess of things that we really just need to get out there and educate as many people as possible about what's going on. And it's astounding if you think about, what you were describing. And I understand that information moved much slower over the course of the last 100 years until the last 20, and it's accelerating all the time. But these are basic ideas. Like the idea that creating more money would make that existing money worth less doesn't seem like it's so abstract that for like 80 years it would have gone completely unnoticed. And even if the banks were hitting their inflation targets of 2%, that would still mean that wages would need to double like every 35 years, which they definitely haven't. Nowhere near that. So everybody, in your example, like everybody's getting wrecked by this erosion of the value of money.
Yeah, it's really sad to see, and people, and unfortunately, our fiat education system hasn't done, probably by design, hasn't done a good job of helping people understand the underlying problem that is, and so people are incapable of going beyond pointing fingers at the surface level symptoms of the underlying issue, right? Everything's expensive. That grocery store is trying to screw me. Like that's as deep as people go. This is expensive. This is the person who sold it to me. That person is trying to rip me off. But that person has expenses too. They're running a business. Everything that they're being supplied with, they need to purchase. All of their employees are rightfully so saying, I need a higher wage. I can't afford to live, or I'm going to go elsewhere. And so like everything is going up because the dollars are worth less. And nobody really understands and takes the time to think beyond the initial knee-jerk reaction.
What's extra crazy is it's not just that some people don't understand. There are people that vehemently believe that this is a necessary thing, and we need to have this. Like, not only is it's necessary, and I think about countries where the money works even less good than places like Canada or the US. And imagine trying to run a business when the money is so volatile to the down that you're changing your prices every day. Like how could you possibly be expected to understand the cost of your inventory and your labor? Like it's amazing that people can do it at all.
Yeah, I mean it's all you can do as a business to not go out of business is to raise prices faster than everyone else, right? Like that's the name of the game, is like, how quickly can I raise prices in a way that won't drive away customers? Like, you kind of have to be like peaking, being like, how high is that person raising prices? Like if I raise it a little bit more, can I like recoup my costs and stay ahead of inflation? Like it's such a game, and people are trying to decipher what the toilet paper they're dealing with is even worth. Like the money is not worth the paper it's printed on.
Yeah, it's like even those, the TikTok rants in your car, it's the general seems that people aren't yet connecting it to the money, other than understanding that something is wrong. And so this is where I feel like we're on a collision course with some kind of inflection point where it's coming. People,
yeah. Well, we've got a litmus test now. I suppose we've got like Yeah, Bitcoin is the world sorting out how a stable fixed supply asset should be priced in purchasing power versus a volatile, we don't know how many will exist in 6 months, let alone 100 years. And with that comes a lot of craziness and uncertainty and trying to hold other assets. I mean, real estate's insane. The volatility of the stock market. Again, people don't have jobs or are needing to work 2 jobs just to make ends meet, and the stock market's hitting all-time highs. Everything is so broken. Valuations are so broken. We're being gaslit saying, oh, the economy's great, better than it's ever been. Look at the jobs report. Meanwhile,
we're going to have to raise rates again.
Yeah. And the majority of jobs are created by the government. So, that's actually siphoning productivity away from industry. Real industry is shrinking. There's so much deceit in all of the numbers, but the numbers are being presented in such a way, saying, again, gaslighting people and saying, no, you're the one that doesn't understand how good it is. And people's lived experience is totally different.
Yeah, there was even, I've seen a headline that was something to the effect of like, consumerism is driving inflation. Like it's our fault. And these things are, it's totally absurd.
Yeah. Stop asking for more money and stop spending money to survive, guys. If you could just stop eating and wanting shelter, this would sort itself out.
Yeah. And this is not to get political, but this is the exact fiat brainness, why we are paying through the nose to heat our homes in one of the coldest places in the world, where like heating your home is not an optional choice in Canada.
Yeah, no, maybe we're just selfish. We it's when it's minus 40. Do we really need easy access to energy?
Yeah, it only keeps us alive.
Yeah.
I want to ask a 2-part question about the show or about your channel. You have a library of content, and so if someone's new or they want to check you out after the show, where do you recommend people who are getting into learning about Bitcoin and the technical aspects of Bitcoin start? And part 2 is there a particular tutorial that you're extra proud of yours that you want to sort of highlight?
Yeah. So I'd say the first thing, there's typically kind of 3 things that I'd say to the absolute beginner that you should kind of focus on. Number 1, how are you going to obtain Bitcoin? Number 2, how do you get a self-custodied wallet, something maybe that you're going to use on your phone or your desktop computer? And number 3, how are you going to secure long-term savings? And typically this comes in the form of finding an exchange or maybe peer-to-peer you might go, depending on how tinfoil hat you want to get around who knows if I have Bitcoin. Number 2 is just going to be as simple as downloading an app and deciding what wallet's going to be good for you. What do you like using? And number 3 is going to be getting a type of hardware device that is basically a layer of security on your Bitcoin. And so to start right now, I think, and this is the tricky bit because Bitcoin is reaching this point where we're in the midst of some growing pains right now because regular Bitcoin transactions, realistically, what most of us have been doing for the past 14, 15 years is the equivalent of an international like an international country to country settlement type thing. Like that's what a regular Bitcoin transaction kind of presents. It's the base layer of our monetary system. And we're building all of these tools on top of it. It's kind of like when we were on a gold standard, how did countries settle debts and major banks settle debts? They would put a bunch of gold on a boat and ship it across the ocean. Well, with Bitcoin, that's you send a regular Bitcoin transaction and it settles in 10 minutes. So orders of magnitude more efficient than the way we used to do things. But still, it can be expensive at times depending on how busy it is, how many people are using Bitcoin at the same time. So now a lot of people are starting to interact with these kind of layers on top of Bitcoin. You can think of those as, maybe it, instead of dealing with gold bars, you're dealing with smaller gold coins, or maybe you could think of it as you have entities that are holding Bitcoin for you and you're transacting, which is not ideal, but it may be some people's first interaction. And then there's kind of these in-between things that there's some trade-offs either in custody or privacy or something like that, but it allows you to transact quickly. And so my onboarding is a bit of a, I don't want to say question mark because I do have a few go-tos that I like, but right now I like the direction that something called Aqua Wallet is going. And so Aqua allows you to do those regular Bitcoin transactions, something that would typically, I'd say from this point moving forward, is going to be more long-term savings. And it also allows you to use a couple of those quicker mechanisms on top of Bitcoin, Lightning Network and Liquid Network. You don't really need to know the technicals of what those things do, but the gist of it is for some trade-offs, you can now transact very quickly and very cheaply. And that will typically be your spending wallet. So I think Aqua Wallet is a good initial interaction with Bitcoin. I also quite like one called Phoenix Wallet, which is a Lightning wallet. And again, there's trade-offs with both, but those are kind of the two initial that I like. And if somebody just really, really wants to experiment with a small amount, very basic, then I tend to send them towards, and some of these aren't available in the States, so I'll caveat that. But Blink is a good custodial Lightning wallet. And then CoinOS, I'm not sure. But that one's great, and it has all the functionality of all the different types of Bitcoin transactions you could deal with. And when I say different types of Bitcoin transactions, you can just think, are you accepting cash or debit cards or credit cards? Or, just think of there's different ways of accepting dollars. Same thing with Bitcoin. There's different ways of accepting Bitcoin, and some apps will allow you to do certain things and some won't. So yeah, Aqua, Phoenix, CoinOS, those are maybe my initial onboarding things that I send people to. And it's really based on what you as an individual are using Bitcoin for.
Cool. And then as far as a personal favorite tutorial on your YouTube page?
Yeah, I'm going to say, I think it's a tie, actually. Number one will be my cold card tutorial. Anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's one of those little devices to secure your Bitcoin. That thing is an epic Lord of the Rings length, super in-depth tutorial on how to use that device. And the reason it's so long is because I cover the basics at the beginning of the video, and then I tried to cover everything that the device can do, all of the special, cool little features that you could want. And so realistically, you can just go through the first half hour or so and be fine. Or you can stick around for 2 full hours and learn everything that you want. So that one I'm very proud of because it was such a huge undertaking. The other, and this is probably across a few different videos, but running a Bitcoin node has been one of the most rewarding sets of videos I've ever done. If you're unsure what a node is, basically a node is running an entire copy of the Bitcoin blockchain. So every transaction that has ever happened, and also running a copy of the rules that govern the network. And so what this does has a few benefits for an individual. Number one, it actually gives you a bit more privacy, because if you're using Bitcoin without running your own node, then you're kind of trusting somebody else to run one for you. And so that person, when they see your transactions, may be able to make note of, oh, this person at this IP address is sending this much Bitcoin. So there's a degree of privacy gained by running your own node. It also protects you, and it's not a huge threat, but it protects you from connecting to a node that may feed you incorrect information. And further, it makes the network resilient to attacks on changes in the code. So if you're running, let's say you have a wallet on your phone, and the wallet itself, the people that created that software, decide that there's some change happening to Bitcoin, and maybe there's collusion of a bunch of different people saying, we're going to increase the supply of Bitcoin. And for whatever horrible reason, the wallet that you're using decides that's going to be the real Bitcoin with the increased supply. You don't really have recourse if you're just relying on them and the node that they're running. But if you're running software where you get to point at your own node, you get to ignore that. You get to say, that's not Bitcoin. I'm not using that. I don't want the supply to double. I will continue to use the one where there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. And I'm going to point it at my node running those rules. So those are kind of the benefits of running a node. And you can also run a lot of cool Bitcoin related apps plugged into that. And these are just little devices you can plug into the wall and access on your local computer and access from afar on your phone. So I've done a number of videos on different options for this. And I've got to say, it's been the most rewarding because when I go to events, when I go to conferences and things like that, the impact of the numbers that I see on the screen of, I see how many people watch those videos, but it doesn't hit home until I go and I hit an event and I'm walking around and, every other person that comes up to me says, hey, I learned how to set up a Bitcoin node because I watched your video. And I start to think, oh my God, like 100 people have said that to me over 3 days. And I extrapolate out and I go, that's just people that are here. And I think of the thousands and tens of thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of little numbers that I see on a screen, and I extrapolate out and I think, wow, that actually did something meaningful. And that hits home for me when somebody comes up to me and says something like that. And I think back to those little faceless numbers that I see on the screen. And those are real people that have taken action and become more self-sovereign because of that. So that, I'm eternally grateful for experiences like that where people come up and say, hey, I learned a thing or two. And I love it. I definitely feel it.
Makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, 100%.
You're evolving into now physical events. And in December, you hosted the first Saturday Sat Market in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so I guess I'll explain. Yeah, let's talk about where it came from and then what it is. I saw a lot of people online that were growing worried of potential draconian measures in and around allowing the use of Bitcoin. We're gonna close the on and the off ramps. We're gonna make it difficult for anybody to obtain Bitcoin or sell Bitcoin or use Bitcoin in a certain way and then want to use it elsewhere afterwards. A lot of people were worried and they were kind of complaining online about it, rightfully so. But I didn't see a lot of people offering up a solution. And in my head, the only solution is to not need to go between the systems, is to just fully exit fiat to the best of your ability and just use Bitcoin. Because when you're earning Bitcoin and when you're spending Bitcoin and people that are accepting Bitcoin and you can meet all your needs locally with individuals that you've created relationships with, how do you stop that? How do you tell somebody, now I know you know a guy who makes beef and sells it for Bitcoin? That's just not allowed anymore. It's as silly as saying everybody has cash and you're no longer allowed to do that. You're no longer allowed to go and buy a candy bar for cash. It's unenforceable. And so I saw these people complaining and I was like, we need to actually do something about this. We actually need to become fully resistant, because if we're just hoping that we get permission to own Bitcoin, it's never going to work out. If Satoshi had come out with Bitcoin and went to central banks and said, hey guys, just heads up, I'm making a new currency. It's probably going to directly compete with you guys. It's going to be capped supply. Anybody can use it anywhere on the planet. It won't require any sort of KYC or anything for anybody to use. Unlimited amounts sent anywhere. Just a heads up. It would have been no. And
you'd be laying in a grave next to the guy who made the car that runs on water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would be, thanks for telling us. Here's your prison cell. But that's not how it happened. It was, we're not asking permission. Here's the code. Everybody who wants to run it with me. So I decided that, let's build the world we want to see. If not you, then who? And I just started reaching out to people. I live in Calgary. You made a trip in, but I started reaching out to everybody that I could, saying, let's make a market. Let's build something. Let's create relationships. We all do something. We're all Bitcoiners, yes, but we all do something. We all have a skill. We all create things. We all offer services. We all have sort of normal jobs, unless you're specifically in Bitcoin, even still. Why isn't everybody that is a Bitcoiner at a Bitcoin meetup accepting Bitcoin for what they do? It's a no-brainer. You love Bitcoin. You know it's better money. Why wouldn't you accept it? Why wouldn't you want that? And why wouldn't you tell everybody that you prefer to be paid in it? And so that's what we started doing. We got together. In 3 weeks, we had 30 plus vendors come in to Calgary, or a lot from Calgary, but some came down from Edmonton. Some came in from Saskatchewan. You came in from BC. We had somebody fly in from Vancouver for it. It was incredible. The energy was amazing. We had all types of different businesses there. And it wasn't just like Bitcoin merch. It was like there was plumbers and home heaters and e-bikes and a hypnotist and artists and all kinds of awesome things that were there. Farmers and people with all kinds of different products and services. And everybody was accepting Bitcoin. We did allow for cash as well, because we wanted people that maybe weren't well versed in Bitcoin yet to feel like they could come and still get that kind of peer-to-peer local relationship, but also could learn about Bitcoin in the process. And so I loved it. I thought it was amazing. And we're doing it again. And it's coming. The next one will be March 23rd. Same place.
Which should be a week from now.
Oh, yes. Is that when we'll be? Yeah.
Okay,
cool. All right. Yes. So I'm very excited. Basically a week from now. I'm very looking forward to it. And my hope is bigger, better, more connections. And I can't wait. It was, and thank you for attending the last one. It was spectacular. I was so glad to have you there.
These things are so cool because of, there's just like an intrinsic spirit of cooperation in the community. And that event was awesome just to see. It's like, blowing the horn of Gondor, and all of a sudden people just come out of the woodwork. And it would be really cool. I think this event is so interesting because it's something that can be done anywhere. And if people are listening and they're passionate about Bitcoin, they're going to Bitcoin meetups, there's nothing preventing this from happening in every city. And this is how these ideas start. It's like your channel, and all of a sudden 100 people learn how to make a node. Like you said, we're going to have to do this one on our own. And so the concept of encouraging this kind of grassroots circular economy and just making it happen, this is how it starts.
Yeah. Again, I can't say it enough, but if not you, then who? And I guess this is a call out to anybody that's able to make it in. Even if you can't be a merchant this time around, come attend. There's no cost to attend. Just come down, see what we're doing. And if you like it, we'd love to have you at the next one as a merchant if you want to offer your goods and services, because the more relationships that we create, the more resilient we become to attacks. And I love the idea of creating meaningful relationships with people that exude similar values to myself. And when we're all on a sound money standard, there's a particular standard that you hold up when it comes to spending your Bitcoin too, because everybody recognizes, hey, this money is more valuable than the toilet paper that I'm used to using. And so you actually are cognizant about what you're spending your money on. And at the end of the day, if you're not up to snuff, if you're offering services or goods that are not worth the sats, you won't retain customers, because people want quality goods if they're spending quality money. And my hope is that as this thing evolves, we'll just get incredible quality from all involved.
Yeah, it's so cool. So we'll include all the information as far as the particulars, the location, and those details will be available in the episode summary. And anything else, Ben, as a final thought?
I guess I can toss out there some resources that I've kind of put together if people are coming at this from a newcomer perspective, and they maybe want to look at a bit of a learning track of, hey, what should I learn about next? Just on my website, btcsessions.ca, there's a section right on the main page that says learn. And if you click on that, it'll take you to a page where it has basically a step-by-step list of things that you might want to learn in order. Again, obtain Bitcoin, get your first wallet, look at hardware, and then it kind of goes from there. It does touch on nodes as well. It kind of will walk you through all of these different things. And you can look at that list and start going down it and say, I've already done that. Okay, I understand this. And then when you see that gap, when you see, oh, I'm not there yet, jump in there and start learning. And you can kind of continue and just start hitting it one at a time. Before you know it, you'll be leveling up, running a node, doing all kinds of lightning transactions, looking at multi-sig, having weird devices kicking around your house and safety deposit boxes and safes, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just always be inquisitive, always continue to learn.
And as you pointed out, like the stuff takes time. Like you're 10, 12, 14 years into this process and paving the way to help other people do it. I think that you're such a good example of that this is a problem that is impacting everybody, and very few people understand that there's a solution. And you're taking action to help other people be in a position to help even more people. So I want to thank you again for coming on the show, Ben. This was rad, and look forward to seeing you at the SAT market next week.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me, and I can't wait to see you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Block Reward. We're trying to do something different here, creating accessible conversations meant for people who aren't obsessed with Bitcoin. If you found this episode informative and engaging, hit that subscribe button to make sure you stay updated with future episodes. Your feedback matters. We'd greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to share your reviews and help us with our goal of creating Bitcoin content that is simple and easy to understand. Bitcoin has an important role to play in the future of finance. It will change the way we save, spend, and invest. Discover why Bitcoin offers a game-changing opportunity for forward-thinking employers by visiting blockrewards.ca. Block Rewards' mission is helping Canadian employers implement strategies for integrating Bitcoin into compensation and benefits, supercharge your recruitment and retention strategies, and help your team members plan for the rising cost of living by rewarding their work with the hardest money ever invented. Special thanks to our top sponsor, Paramount Employee Benefits Consulting, Canada's only Bitcoin forward benefits and pension advisory. For more information, find them at paramountbenefits.ca. Big shout out to Podigy, our production team that makes all this possible, and BMX Escape for producing our music. Bitcoin is an expansive and dense topic many people walk away from early. To Bitcoin enthusiasts looking for that podcast they can share with friends, family, and colleagues, one they'll actually listen to, we hope that is us. The content of these conversations is meant to be provided for information purposes only. Nothing here is investment advice. Bitcoin is a big topic. Be sure to do your own research before making any personal financial decisions. Thanks for listening.